Today I thought it would be fun to see a more novice terrarium enthusiast such as myself react to probably the most impressive person in all of terrarium YouTube anyways.
I've been on a quest to construct giant ecosystem vivariums, each hosting a plethora of resident life, plants, fungi, and creatures.
We're talking about Mr. Mikey Bustos, I'm not sure how to say his last name, aka AntsCanada.
It's been over 2 years since I first started this project and have since meticulously cultured 4 massive worlds into fruition. Pandora, a rainforest floor vivarium.
But if for some reason you're seeing my video and you haven't seen these ecosystems, you need to check this out.
Attached via a glass bridge of vines through the floor above to Arcadia, a treetop canopy vivarium.
So I started falling in love with this channel when he built the first Pandora ecosystem, just because it was massive. I think it's like, I don't know the exact dimensions, but it's like 15 feet by, it's huge. And then he just sort of kept going. He added another one, he connected the two, he added a third one, he connected all 3 of them. And the idea of the connections and each of them being like different parts of one big ecosystem is, I think, the dream that most of us are kind of like dreaming in the back of our mind when we do this terrarium stuff. I actually wanted to make a video talking about do terrarium keepers have like a god complex? In short, I do kind of think that us terrarium keepers have like a god complex thing inside of us.
To Arcadia, a treetop canopy vivarium, as well as a cave tunnel to Hydromeda, a tropical wetlands vivarium, and my latest juggernaut, Verdantia, an isolated tropical grasslands vivarium, which is scheduled to attach to the other vivaria later this year. As their creator of worlds, I have the responsibility to manage the ecological balance of the ecosystems within each vivarium, resolve its problems, introduce new life, and document all the things I learn along the way.
See, that right there is what I was talking about, that like kind of god-like power that we all sort of crave with this terrarium stuff. It's less of a negative thing and it's more of a responsibility thing. Almost like, you know, these are our babies back here. Like, we created this world, and now that we've created this world, we're responsible for taking care of it and providing for it and doing the best we can to ensure its survival. And maybe where that comes from is this like yearning in the back of all of our minds that we hope whatever is actually creating all of this, maybe they feel that same way too, that same sort of sense of responsibility for us.
These vivaria tell an insane and inspiring story of triumph, failure, birth, death, rivalries, and intriguing surprises that I can't wait to show you, as well as some brand new, never before seen species to enter the system, all happening today.
I want to point something out before we actually get into this, and that's kind of like the love-hate relationship that I have with this AntsCanada channel, because on the one hand, it's the most inspiring thing that I probably ever watch, but on the other hand, I'll be honest with you, I see the videos come up, and sometimes it takes me a week or 2 weeks or even a month to watch the video, because I know that number one, it's going to inspire me to do something new, and I know it's going to like fill me with this fire. But on the other hand, I also know that it's going to like give me this like bummed out sort of feeling too, that I'm just so far away from anything like this ecosystem setup. I do bet you if Mikey saw Genesis back there, he would say, you know what, you're starting out even better than I did.
The creatures and biologics I collected all lay patiently in their holding containers to be released into my various vivaria. You guys will love what lay in these containers as we visit each of my vivaria to place the new creatures inside. But before we go ahead and seed new life into the system, I have to show you something I found that was not good.
So I was really inspired when I saw AntsCanada, and I love his relationship that he has with the creatures and the ecosystems, where the ecosystem kind of comes first. You know, that's the focus. He's creating a world, and then the inhabitants, I mean, he loves them just as much as everything else, but they aren't the star of the show. They're just players in the game, kind of like we are on this earth.
They were gathered behind the rock wall in Pantora. The Dark Horde, an invasive supercolony of black crazy ants, had established a multi-chambered nest, tending to huge clumps of brood, eggs.
This is actually the second video I've seen that are like hating on these black crazy ants for some reason. I think they're just like super invasive, and I think that once they get in, they basically dominate everything else.
Now, I love all ants, even the invasive ones. I even care for a ravenous fire ant colony. But if you've been following this series for a while, you know that these black crazy ants have been the biggest pain in the gaster since the very start of this vivarium project. The colonies have multiple queens and don't require a nuptial flight to mate, and can inbreed with siblings without any genetic effects, making them a perfect super ant that steals resources from, displaces, and even eats native ants sharing the forest.
So there you go. He explained it. He always does a better job of explaining it.
I've been carefully weakening the Dark Horde's population via spot vacuuming, but this time, I can't quite get behind this rock wall with my vacuum. But AC family, they were actually in the perfect position for me to attempt another idea.
So speaking of that rock wall, I noticed that that's the only time he actually did anything on the side of the terrarium, on that first one. I was super inspired by the last 3 terrariums, specifically just because it was really refreshing to see someone that was doing something, like just a massive terrarium, but then not covering the entire background. Instead, just letting the glass sort of be like the sky or a clear surface that encapsulates the ecosystem inside. And that was like a huge thought that was swirling around in my head when I was coming up with the whole concept of Genesis back there.
I went off to begin the preparations for their extermination in the name of our vivarium's biodiversity. Meanwhile, speaking of biodiversity, I had some ecosystem biodiversification business to attend to. I added the native snails I collected to the rainforest floor. Also in this collection container was a katydid. Welcome to your new home, little ones.
I would love to have like all the bugs and stuff that he has in his systems, but even so, that's like a 3 foot by 3 foot back there. And I can't even imagine having that many bugs like crawling around in there. I'm sure there's a lot of things I could add. I just don't really know what. And I think you just need one of these massive systems to be able to really get all like these snails and grasshoppers and all this stuff going on in here.
It was amazing that one of the snails had a blue tinge to its swirls, something I never noticed when I collected it. I placed the snails in along with all the leaves and lettuce of the container, which definitely also hosted some tiny unseen living creatures that hitched along for the ride.
Another thing that Mikey has sort of been inspiring in my head is this whole idea of not being afraid of all of the little hitchhikers and everything like that. I've noticed that a lot of the information online about terrariums is always so like paranoid about everything being so sterile. And I think it's encouraging to see the way that he doesn't overthink that whole thing. He just lets sort of anything go and, gets to observe what happens.
It was time for these gorgeous bugs. I opened the container to release the assassin bugs.
I just ordered some of those containers so that we could do some tissue culturing and what I planned was going to be the next video. But then it snowed here in North Carolina, which it almost never does, and my package has been delayed, and I've gotten some moss sitting back there waiting on me that I'm just kind of hoping is going to be okay until my cups arrive, and I've got a couple other supplies coming too.
These 2 assassin bugs cautiously looked out into their new world and began to step forward.
So just to let you know, Mikey lives in the Philippines, and I've seen on a couple of his videos where he goes out and actually like collects all of these different like bugs and all these different species that he puts into the ecosystems. So that's one of the reasons that he has such a diverse range of species. But yeah, he's also not like paying for all of these little cups and everything like most of us kind of like terrarium peons have to do.
These assassin bugs are predators, where they use that sharp needle-like beak, called a rostrum, to stab their prey. Inject paralyzing and digestive enzymes that liquefy the prey's insides, before sucking them up from the inside out. They deliver a painful bite, so I made sure not to come too close. But I was happy they could join our forest to help control insect populations. Enjoy your new home, guys.
You see what I'm talking about there? That's what he is focused on. Is he's focused on like the entire system. He's introducing hundreds of different things to these ecosystems, and he's literally, yeah, he's created a world. He's playing God.
Next, one of the grossest creatures I've ever collected. Welcome home, land planarian. It looked like a leech.
I'm pretty sure I actually saw him collect this.
I placed it along with a moss bed it was sleeping on, onto the soil of Pandora. It woke up, and with its tiny beady eyes, looked around its new home before venturing off into the leaf litter in search of tiny soil insects to eat.
Now, living in the Philippines, he does have the advantage of basically just being able to go outside and collect all of this stuff just from the wild and stick it literally into its almost similar habitat right in his ecosystem. Whereas in my situation, everything that goes into my ecosystem has to come through some sort of service, through the mail.
Next, from the horrendous looking critters to the cutest, I placed in the giant millipedes. The massive fire-leg millipede awoke from its slumber and realized it had been placed into new surroundings.
I did see a millipede crawling around right by the staghorn fern in Genesis back there the other day. Must have come in with like one of the plants or something like that. But yeah, I noticed that the other day, so that's kind of interesting.
With its antennae, it began to sniff the world around it, carried forth by its multiple brightly colored legs.
I'm kind of creeped out by millipedes though, I'll be honest.
Sometimes, I'll discover some new species that appear seemingly out of nowhere, that definitely hitch a ride into our system via leaf litter or decor that I add into the forest. You see, periodically, I need to add leaf litter and plant biologics in order to bring new nutrients into our rainforest. In nature, these leaves would fall from the trees and shrubs from above, thereby replenishing valuable nutrients in the soil by way of creatures and microbes assisting in its breakdown.
I think I'm going to do that on my next build. I think I'm just going to not sterilize my leaf litter. I'm just going to go out into the forest and collect a bunch of it and even scoop up some like dirt and things like that. And just in hopes of getting like a random little assortment of microorganisms that come along with it. And I'm just going to see how that works out, but I'll probably end up regretting that.
I don't bake or quarantine these plant biologics like I would have if it were an exotic pet enclosure.
Did you see that moss and how luscious that was in the background?
Because the whole purpose of this project is to seed life from the wild directly into these tanks. And sometimes the life that propagates from these outside items shocks me. Check this out.
I think that's something we can all admit that we dream of, is being able to just sort of take everything from the wild and bring it into your ecosystem and observe it. And you know, if things aren't working out, maybe you can take it out and release it back into the wild.
A blue ant, a worker from our resident sapphire royals, traveled down with its newly collected moss debris gathered from the canopy down the vine branch. It was headed home. Finding the best way home, though, was a bit of a challenge. It opted to take the pothos stem instead of the branch, which was full of black crazy ants.
I thought we were doing more of a tour video on this one, like where he actually walks around and talks and points and talks without the whole narrative thing. So I'll be honest, I'm a little disappointed at this point, but maybe it's coming. And if not, it's still a good update video.
I couldn't wait to see where the blue ants were nested.
When I watch these videos, I also get super inspired about the camera angles, just all of the different ways. Like, these are ants that we're looking at right now. Like, how is he, the patience it takes and the creativity that it takes to be able to get the different angles, and even the way that he kind of like follows them around and moves with them. It's pretty impressive.
I followed the blue ant where it wandered into a shadowy area of the stump.
I bet it takes him like sometimes 6 hours of just sitting by the terrarium, like waiting for these like stories to emerge, following different creatures around, and all of the ones that like end up in some like dead end, yeah, and they were just like over there doing nothing kind of deal.
In fact, several workers were bringing in debris into this area, and upon closer inspection, I noticed a tiny unsuspecting hole with a guard at the entrance. They were bringing the debris into the nest to use as building materials. But as one of the blue ants was standing still to rest.
See the size of that blue ant compared to those other ants? That's crazy.
These are flower ants. They're invasive in other parts of the world, but native to where I live, therefore a friend to our forest. So neat to welcome a new species of ant to Pandora. Aren't they cool? They definitely got in here via decor. And this AC family is why I don't disinfect any vivarium additives.
I mean, he really drilled in the point of not sterilizing your leaves and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, to me that's pretty inspiring.
I continued with the introduction of biologics, and this next addition really excited me.
See that stump in there? I want to get like a piece of wood like that for my next build. Every time he shows those like pulled back shots, I'm always like pausing the video and like just staring and like looking at what he did and imagining like, all right, he probably did this to kind of like build that up, and I don't know, I try and figure it out.
I collected these pili nut fruits from the cloud rainforest floor, where they seem to be a popular food for ants and other creatures. I placed them in various spots around the forest.
So that's so cool that he just gets to go outside and collect some food for the ants and come back inside, throw it in his ecosystem. Whereas someone like me, I'd have to like go on Etsy and look for like a pili fruit, and someone would sell it to me for like $100 for 2, and I'd have to wait 3 weeks for it to come in the mail, and then I'd have to probably grow it from the seed because it turned out to be like a seed ad instead of the actual fruit or something like that.
Moments later, these pili nut fruits attracted some critters that I was elated to see. Awesome!
I do kind of love when he goes, awesome!
I was super excited to see this species of roach. I added this species of forest roach into here way back.
Before we get into the roaches, I do just want to say that if you do any sort of like research on Mikey from AntsCanada, he's done like a lot of television stuff, and he's done a lot of comedy, and he's got like a very professional background as far as like presentation goes. So it kind of makes a little bit more sense when you see his videos, like where he got all those skills, why he's so good, and probably why he's perfected the kind of like over, like, awesome, I just fell in love. But he does it in like a way that I can't do it, because he does it that in a way that makes it believable, but so kind of like over the top that it also makes you feel good when you hear it. He's always pointing out minute little details in the terrariums. I want to point out some minute little details that I've noticed about Mikey from AntsCanada, because I've studied him a lot.
And I thought they weren't able to proliferate, but sure enough, it looks like they have. Moments later, I watched as the Asian bullet ants began tearing away at the fruit's flesh to take home back to the nest. It was amazing to see the distribution and cycling of these newly added nutrients into our system.
That is a good point, that when you throw a fruit in there, all the little critters and the bugs and stuff are going to take little pieces of that and spread it all throughout everything. It's all going to decompose. It's going to feed everything. It's going to feed the plants. I guess that's how that's how an ecosystem works, doesn't it?
I also buried a pili nut fruit directly into the soil, right under the glass bridge, leading up to the canopy. Perhaps we could possibly grow a pili nut tree that could extend up into Arcadia. We'll be heading up to the treetops next, so hold on tight. Now the next creature going into the tank may frighten some of you. Arachnophobes, look away until I say it's safe. I opened the side door, where Valentino, my green tree python, was rested. He sleeps and hangs out in all 4 vivaria. And today, he was chilling at ground level.
So that's one area I don't want to go in my terrarium journey. I don't want to have anything in my ecosystems that eat rodents. Because I despise rodents, I have like this weird fear of them from some experiences I had in my childhood when my parents would make me take the trash out that they would just throw out the back door into the snow in Canada. And I'd have to drag them and they'd be full of mice and mice would be running everywhere. And I just have a weird irrational fear of mice. And I don't want to have anything in my systems that I have to constantly interact with, even if they're dead rodents. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole snake thing. But it's good as an artist to have barriers. That's another thing that I've learned over my life. You got to have the constraints so that you know what you're building and you can actually get there a little quicker.
Sorry to disturb, Valentino. I have a new guest to introduce to the forest. I placed the lichen huntsman spider into Pandora.
I'm not a massive spider guy either. I'm not really afraid of them. I think they look kind of cool in like this weird alien way, but I don't know. They just don't have any like sort of like cuteness to them at all.
From jumping spiders to tangleweb spiders, orb weavers, to exotic species like lynx spiders in the grasslands, our arachnids have perpetuated effortlessly in our ecosystem.
I do like those little jumping spiders though. I will admit that, those cute little guys with like the eyes and stuff.
The king of the spiders, however, were these. A female huntsman stationed herself on the glass, cleaning her legs. She was the descendant of a huntsman I placed into here 2 years ago, named Lady Deathstrike. And it was amazing to see the resemblance, even after many generations down the lineage. It's actually crazy to be able to watch these generations come and go over time. Perhaps a glimpse of what God sees.
I wonder what that spider was doing with his leg. Like, do you think he like is walking around and picking stuff up on the little hairs and then just kind of like cleaning like tiny little bugs and stuff off of it? Or maybe sucking moisture off of it or something like that. I don't know, it was weird. I wonder if they'd sit there and do that with all of their legs, or if they just have like one that they kind of feel around with and then kind of suck on that.
These females seem to come closer to ground level to release the babies, but spend most of their time in the treetops. AC family, I think it's time we go up there now.
I think up in that connector there was some manzanita wood, just like I've got in Genesis back there. At least it looked pretty similar.
I opened the container to release some new beetles I collected into Orchidia. This here is the green scarab beetle and a blue weevil.
Maybe it's not that same one, but I'm pretty sure that that's like a pest that everyone warns you about in the gardening world.
There are 400 described beetle species in the world. A whopping 25% of all the animal species humans have ever discovered are beetles.
I think beetles are cool, but I just don't really get them. Like, they look cool and they have like shiny stuff, and I'm like impressed with their size and like the armor they've developed and all that sort of thing, but I just don't really, they just kind of seem to bumble around and not really do much. But maybe that's just because I'm not curious enough to actually take the time to pay attention.
Now, there isn't much new to report about Orchidia, other than the fact that species diversity is at an all-time high.
Is Orchidia the one that it has the paludarium that has the water bottom?
Frogs, geckos, blue ants, and other life forms at compost level. In fact, look at this. A mass of whitish buds have begun to grow on one of the branches. They're a bit eerie looking.
I've actually wanted to get some like cool forest mushrooms in my terrariums for a long time. And I've actually done some mycology stuff and I have all the equipment to do it. So at some point in the future, we're gonna hopefully get out into the woods and find some cool little species of forest mushroom that I can take home. And maybe we'll go from like spore and I'll like do like a whole science-y kind of thing with it or something. I don't know, like that.
Later in the day, this mass grew to this.
That's what's so cool about mushrooms, is they just have it, like plants have like a really slow growth process, but mushrooms, if you've ever grown them, they kind of sprout up like that, and then within a week they're completely done. So you really have to like you get a very small window to observe them. And that's what I think would be so exciting about adding them to the terrarium as well, is just because you get to see them kind of pop up and then they disappear.
Fairy inkcap mushrooms. These have been sprouting in our forest for years, both in Pandora and up in Arcadia.
I confirmed that I've got some mycelium growing in my soil back there, so maybe some like just mushrooms that somehow made it in naturally will sprout up in the terrarium for us.
But AC family, sometimes I'll come across life forms.
Let's just say I'm taking a lot of inspiration from this terrarium design lately.
Plant, animal, nor fungus that will spring up in the vivaria. And these next creatures, if they could be called that.
I like this one, but I don't really care to have like the whole water thing right now. I don't really care to have the whole like deep paludarium thing going on. I do understand it, and it's really cool that he has like a wetlands environment in the system, but this is probably my least favorite of the terrariums in the AntsCanada universe.
Prize alien organisms that sprung out of nowhere in Hydromeda.
It is a whole new world though when you get to observe like life just coming out of everywhere, including under the water too though.
Our wetlands, though kicking off with a sort of rough start, have turned out to be the most stable and unproblematic of the vivarium worlds, with its gorgeous collection of plants growing epiphytically on the wood. The mosses and vines have truly thrived here, with the vines lowering their air roots down into the water to collect nutrients.
I've also got a vine lowering its air root in the terrarium back there, so I'm excited. It's not really reaching for water, but I think it's going to go down and find the soil, and I don't know, it's kind of cool that he's got the same thing I got.
Kept clean and manicured by the cleaner cherry shrimp below the water surface.
Do you ever get scared that you might have to come back as like a cherry shrimp or something like that? I'm sure it wouldn't be as bad as we think it would. We just kind of imagine it would be terrible to not have the brain power that us humans, at least that we think we have. But maybe it would be nice to not have really any thoughts besides just like survival and reproduction of your species and things like that. I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting thought experiment to sit there and think about like, what do these creatures actually think about?
I love to watch Cascadia, the peaceful waterfall, deliver fresh water to the aquatic system.
I want to have a water feature in my next build, but I am a little bit scared of it as well, just because I've done water features in my terrariums before, and I always just seem to have issues with them. Now, granted, it was always in like smaller terrariums, but I always seem to have just over humidity issues, and everything just gets a little too soggy and muddy.
A few weeks back, I spotted something truly strange adjacent to the waterfall. These pink balls.
This is probably the coolest part of terrariums. I was just talking with someone about this earlier today, and it's these like random little things that just like pop up out of nowhere, and you're like, what is that and where did it come from?
These pink balls were nestled all around the wet moss. At first I thought it was perhaps droppings from some animal, but then figured it was possibly some kind of fungus. But AC family, upon further research,
I would think it might be some sort of an egg sac or something. I don't know what he's about to say, but...
Guys, this is Lycogala epidendrum, also known as groaning slime or goat's milk. It's actually a type of slime mold.
So it's not an egg sac.
These pink balls are the fruiting bodies of the Lycogala amoeba that spring up on damp, rotten wood at a certain season of the year.
I'm not going to get into my whole rant about how great moss is, but slime is kind of like in that same world where it just has like its own thing going on, and it's weird and it's slimy and it's kind of gross, but it's just so much more complex than we think it is.
When not in this fruiting stage, the amoeba are single-celled individuals that move about as very small, red amoeba-like organisms called plasmodia that eat bacteria, fungal and plant spores, protozoa, and organic matter. Crazy to think that such strange life forms exist in the world.
So is he saying that these little pink balls like move around and consume nutrients for the slime and then like deliver it back to the slime? I don't know if I heard that right, but I think that's what he was saying.
From my collection, I had a small container of water scooped up from a drum of water in the forest containing some tree frog tadpoles and mosquito larvae. Have a look at them.
Mosquito larvae. Why would you? I can't imagine why you'd want to put that in your terrarium. But again, if you have like a massive system, that's fine. I've got 2 of these little flying bugs in there. I have no idea how they got in there. They must have flown in through a crack or something like that. And I find them so annoying because nothing can seem to like catch them and eat them. And they're just like, they're always like hovering around, like flying like these jittery little, they're just really annoying.
This species of tree frog is likely different from the species we currently have.
Okay, so it's not, I didn't think it looked like mosquito larvae. It was a tree frog. I thought he said he scooped up like a bunch of mosquitoes. Maybe that's what the tadpoles were eating.
So I couldn't wait to see what type of tree frogs they would develop into. I could see little tiny legs already on the way. Now instead of pouring this whole thing into the water...
You know what Mikey does, and you know how he gets this motivation? I'm starting to figure it out more and more. The more I watch his videos, he fills his life with these surprises. He just like scoops a thing of water from the forest bucket that's been collecting from the rain and all that sort of stuff, and he throws it into his ecosystem. And the reason that he does that is because it's like Christmas. Every time something new kind of blooms out of like whatever he threw into his ecosystem.
I decided to simply place the entire container on this ledge to allow the critters to develop in peace, as they would have in the forest they were collected from, to enter our system as adults when they were ready. On the moss nearby was a gruesome sight. A female cricket was devouring another cricket.
I do find crickets pretty gross, to be honest with you. I don't know, something about the twitchiness. There's all the things that are just like twitchy and jumpy are just, I don't know, they make you nervous or something, don't they?
Up in a nearby plant, another cricket watched the gruesome sight from afar.
What is that cricket up there thinking? Like just watching that? Is that his sibling or something, do you think? That he's watching this other cricket just eat his mother's brains out of her head? Do they think that deep? Do you ever wonder about that? Do these creatures have like family systems and things that they care about? Like, do they have a buddy that they've just been like hanging out with for their entire lives, and then one day they just have to sit up on a ledge and watch some other like bigger cricket suck its brains out of its face?
These crickets are opportunistic feeders, and my guess is another cricket slipped from the driftwood and fell into the water, eventually drowned, and drifted its way to this bank where the female snatched it up for a feast.
So it's always kind of fun that it seems like he answers my questions as soon as I like have them pop in my head when I'm watching these videos. And I guess in that case, you know, if the cricket had died from a drowning or something already, it's probably the only, not only logical, but proper thing for a cricket to do is to consume the cricket that gave its life up for whatever reason. A swim, I guess.
A very pregnant amano shrimp was sifting through the grains of sand for edibles. Sadly, the larvae hatching from those eggs won't be able to survive, as they need partially salty water conditions to develop. I think a brackish water vivarium is in our future, AC family.
So it's kind of interesting that the shrimp won't know that. It won't be able to somehow like detect that the water's not good enough for her to lay her eggs. They just like kind of do it anyways. And I think that's where we get that idea that these creatures are just like sort of on autopilot of, I'm supposed to do this, I'm going to achieve this goal, and I'm going to do my eggs regardless of the fact if they're going to survive or not, because that's why I'm here for this short little blip of time. And I think there's something to learn in that. maybe?
I spotted one of the crayfish feeding on a drowned millipede that fell from above. It's sad that creatures from above suffer from such a watery fate, but this transit of creatures traveling from Pandora and Orcadia to Hydromeda to become food for the creatures of the wetlands is necessary.
Nobody likes to talk about like the sad side of things and the fact that things have to die for other things to survive. And everyone wants to kind of like avoid that idea, just like we do in our normal lives. But it is essential, and it is important, and it is how the world keeps spinning. And again, I think there might be something to learn from all of that.
Pretty cool to know that one biome is feeding another. But speaking of the crayfish, there's a slight issue here. It was an ultimate battle of the Titans. The two crayfish had engaged in an epic wrestling match of pinchers and spines in an ancient ritualistic joust over territory and optimal food resources.
Like, he had to sit there for a while to be able to catch this fight. Like, I'm sure this sort of stuff doesn't happen all the time. And he had to be there at the right moment to see this little shrimp battle break out. He had to have his camera all ready to go. He had to have everything all set up. He had to be in the like mindset to sit there and actually find this sort of story. And he's the best.
But in the world of crayfish, victory isn't necessarily determined by size. The larger crayfish decided to make a run.
Probably because he figured he was getting a little bit older and he didn't need to like lose one of his arms for the rest of his life. Maybe he was thinking about that, or didn't want to like hobble around with like only legs on one side of his body. And maybe I shouldn't fight with this young buck.
He suffered no injuries other than a scarred ego as the smaller crayfish retreated into the plants, which he just claimed as his rightful territory. Now, I initially placed these crayfish into here to help shake the wetlands up a bit, to transform the land, which I felt seemed more like a manicured garden than a wild space. And boy, did the crayfish deliver.
Now, talking about a manicured garden versus a wild space, that's another thing that I think about all the time, is that balance between those two. And that's literally like what is floating around in my mind every time I'm coming up with a design for a terrarium, is how do I make this appealing to me, where it's got that sort of organized kind of human look that we all want. We want to see things that we can like see patterns in and all that sort of stuff. So we have to satisfy that. But we also want to inject, like, I call it the hand of God. And the hand of God is just life and organic, just chaos coming together into something organized. And I feel like the two combined, the human side and then the godlike side, and I feel like when the two of those kind of smash together, we get things like the terrariums that we're watching on AntsCanada. We get things like Genesis back there. And I think that's so exciting.
Once a space full of mosses, we're now stripped completely of moss.
Listen, I'd be mad if my little critters started eating all of my moss.
Bare spots of exposed wood were now seen in places that once hosted some beautiful beds of moss.
I will say that is one thing that does kind of go away as your terrarium progresses, is all of that like bare wood kind of like all the textures that you try and create from the beginning. They do eventually kind of just get covered up in like a little blanket of green and foliage and mosses and just all of this weird stuff growing on them. And it's cool because you can go in and you can like inspect all of that stuff. And you have like a literal science experiment in front of you. But on the other hand, you kind of lose all of that human touch, that detail and that textures that I threw this in here so the wood would kind of curve around this way, but now it just doesn't, can't even see the curve because the plants are all covering it up. You do kind of lose that a little bit.
But the most disheartening loss of all? My precious Boosie! No! The crayfish had eaten my Bucephalandra plants, tearing aggressively away at its rhizomes and eating them cum gusto. I now had no Boosie left in these lands, and it made me quite sad. it was time to intervene here as well.
So far this crayfish has beat up another one. It's destroyed this plant. It doesn't seem like a very good addition to the terrarium.
I had to get back to my main order of business. I'll be back to deal with you, crayfish. There were a couple more creatures to release into Verdantia.
Okay, so Verdantia is the newest of the terrariums. It's the grasslands terrarium. And one of the things that I love about this one is, number one, simplicity. I just wanted to show that simplicity again.
I released a glow beetle, as well as a new Queen Dolichoterus ant.
Is a glow beetle a glow bug? The ones that like glow at night?
Good luck, guys, and welcome to the grasslands.
Wait, are glow bugs beetles?
I noticed a pair of mating clown isopods. This behavior here is known as mate guarding, where the male climbs onto the female's back and rides along with her.
How does he learn this stuff is what I wonder. How does he know that that's called mate guarding? Like, whoever told him that? And if he learned that in like a class or something, how did he remember that is my question. Like, how do you gain this knowledge? I feel like it's something I've been struggling with my whole life.
This action serves to prevent rival males from mating with her before he has the chance. The actual transfer of sperm happens during copulation, which isn't happening here yet.
You hear this like calypso music going on behind? Who is the creative that's coming up with that? And how are they, maybe they're using AI to match the music with the scene and then just kind of like tweaking it as they go. But I like to imagine that it's someone out there that just knows what they're doing, and they know that a calypso music background is perfect for the isopod mating scenes.
And oop, a passing millipede scuttled by, rudely interrupting them. So the isopods went off to mate in private somewhere else.
Do you think they were really looking for privacy, or do you think they just didn't want to get eaten by the millipede possibly because they're letting their defenses down because they're getting busy with each other?
I was so happy to see life emerging like crazy now in the grasslands. I noticed a slant-faced grasshopper had just molted from its old skin, emerging as a fully formed adult.
So this does kind of help me understand why he wants to throw all of these tiny little bugs and all these tiny little creatures into the ecosystems. I can almost guarantee almost everywhere he looks, if he looks for long enough, he'll catch something. He'll catch something new, he'll catch something doing something. And I just wonder if he ever catches something that he's never seen before.
Also joining them in these grasslands were the ordinary green grasshoppers, which helped control the grasses. Young native crickets, and these awesome Philippine katydids. Endemic katydids whom I watched grow up in the grasslands, who helped control the invasive basil growing all over the place.
So it is pretty cool to think of Earth as like one big terrarium, and it literally needs all of these creatures. It needs this bug to control like a basil plant, or it's just happened to find this basil plant that happens to grow out of control unless these grasshoppers come in and eat it all. And because they get to eat it all, they get to reproduce a lot. And because they reproduce a lot, they have more babies, and they all start eating all of this basil, and it all works out into this big like happy balance. Unfortunately, it's difficult to do that in our terrariums because we just simply don't have the space for it all. It's cool to see a system like this where Mikey has he has just enough space to start witnessing some of this stuff for real. But really, Earth is the greatest terrarium that we've got.
Of course, these orthopterans were essential to the grasslands, as they not only ate plants, but they produced some incredible fertilizer.
Did you see that thing's face? I also sometimes wonder, so I've done like some 3D modeling and that sort of stuff. I used to build like video games back in the day. And does someone design all of these creatures? Like, is it just one thing that's designing all of these different creatures? Have they created a system where the creatures sort of like design themselves? Maybe that's the theory that I probably lean a little bit more towards. Or is everyone, is it just like a group participation thing and everybody kind of gets to like have a bug that they've designed, or you go to your teacher and you say, oh, I created this new lizard or something like that, and they're like, oh yeah, send a couple seeds down to earth to we'll see how it does. You ever wonder if there's like something above us looking in on us talking about that sort of stuff?
Poop. They also were an excellent protein source for the dinosaurs of the grasslands. Evidence of the dinosaurs' whereabouts were all over these grasslands.
What could the dinosaurs of the grasslands be? I'm gonna guess some sort of like a lizard.
It wasn't long before Sonny and Cher, our resident king quails, emerged to commence their afternoon prowl for edibles.
So the quails are the dinosaurs of the thing? Oh yeah, I guess dinosaurs did have like feathers and were more bird-like than reptile-like. Isn't that what we've all been taught?
They wandered into the misty fields for insects and seeds. Now, as much as they love visiting the seed bowl, I've also noticed how much they love foraging elsewhere. I moved these birds in here in hopes they might breed. I've been trying to get them to breed forever, but I suppose their previous homes, namely Pandora and my giant home aviary, weren't suitable habitats for them.
Yeah, it's got like this big aviary with all these different creatures living in it too, in addition to all of these 4 massive terrariums.
But grasslands are their natural habitat, and this was as natural a home as they could get. So I had my fingers crossed for some baby quails running around here soon. There were also other birds that have successfully produced young, but this week I made an alarming discovery.
These are probably the other birds that he had in his aviary.
4 society finches peeked out at me from their nest in the great tree. Last week, I noticed one of the babies poking its head out, so I knew babies were on the way, and I'd be spotting several baby birds around Verdantia soon.
Just like how chickens lay eggs, whether they're fertilized or not, all birds do the same thing as that as well? I think they do. I think all birds lay eggs, whether they've been fertilized or not.
When I first added the birds in here, there were 3 hatchlings and some unhatched eggs. But AC family, this week I spotted this in the tree. It was a baby bird. Only one. Guys, I'm sad to announce that this was the sole survivor of the batch. Now, there are several reasons why this could have been the only survivor of the nest. It could have been the largest chick, and the parents continued to feed it more than the others, simply because it could capture their attention the most, until the other chicks starved to death or got pushed out of the nest.
I mean, that is so weird to think about how animals, like, do they care about that? Do they care that they're ignoring 2 of their children that are just going to die and they're not feeding them? Us humans are just so different than that. I have 3 kids of my own, and the last thing you would ever do is let like one of them die just because they were a little more quiet or something like that. And it sounds so brutal that the birds like react this way, but I don't know, like those are the kind of things that I like to sit around and think about.
Ideally, all eggs hatch at the same time, and all babies grow at the same rate. But I think what happened back when they were in my aviary was that the eggs were laid by different parents at different times, and usually a mom would only sit on the eggs to heat them up once all the eggs are laid, just so that they all develop and hatch at the same time. But in this case, where 2 couples decided to lay and sit on the eggs in the same nest, it could have created a staggered incubation period.
You see what I'm talking about? How he always answers the questions that pop up in your head? Like, yeah, it's like a real scientific answer to the question of literally why they do that. But that's good information to know. I'm coming from more of like why, from a philosophical perspective, maybe, is what you want to call it. Like, why? Why do they, but why still? I'm always asking, but why?
Poor fella. But I was happy it made it to this fledgling stage, fully feathered, where it has left the nest. At this point, it was still begging for regurgitated food from its parent.
It is also possible that maybe they just are too stupid. Maybe they just don't, maybe they literally don't see the other ones because the other one's just bigger and it like sticks his head out more out the nest. And they come back and they're like, you know, I thought birds could see pretty good, but...
But it definitely needed to learn to fly now, so that it could collect food for itself. It was stubborn, as it begged the adults to be fed. The adults would cooperatively teach this chick its first lesson. The flock flew to the other side.
It is kind of cool though to think about that one bird that did make it. Like, how lucky of a chance was that? And don't we all that are kind of alive have that same luck that we've somehow been born and have survived and are able to be here and all that stuff? So I don't know, the confidence that that one surviving bird has must be pretty impressive.
Leaving the baby with one adult at the great tree. Okay, little one, just follow my lead, she guided. Leap and flap. Leap, flap. The baby, suddenly insecure, was reluctant, but something inside him could feel he was ready to try leap, flap. And just like that, the baby finch had taken its first flight. Awesome.
Awesome. That is pretty cool that he got to witness a baby bird taking its first flight. I remember I used to go on like long walks all the time, and I wish I walked more now, but I used to go on like 3-hour walks every single day. And there was always like a period in the springtime when I'd be walking down like a sidewalk or something, and I would just see like dead robins, like little bird robins on the ground. And it was the ones that fell out of the nest. And it was always kind of sad. And at some point I like kind of came to this conclusion that it was just my responsibility, because I was on these long walks and I happened to be the person that came across it. It was my responsibility to, you know, kind of scoot it off of the sidewalk and get it under some pine needles or something, at least to, you know, just not have it just rot on the ground.
The moment had come. It was time to eliminate the dark horde. Myrmecologists suggest that the most eco-friendly way to destroy an invasive ant nest is to pour boiling water over it.
But I found that when I was growing up, pouring boiling water in the ant hills never actually worked. It was always pouring like gas and like lighting it on fire that worked. But then it would start like lighting the ground on fire around it. And I don't know why my parents let me do some of the stupid stuff that they let me do.
As sad as it was to do this, I knew it had to be done. As soon as the scalding hot water came pouring in, the ants went into a panic, and in an instant, any brood or workers coming in contact with the scalding hot wave of water were eliminated. The boiling hot water continued to flow from above as I ensured to cover every single chamber. Workers came pouring out of the entrances.
I would just like freak out, I guess, and probably rip the whole terrarium apart and try and do something like that. I would be really annoyed if I had like a crazy ant infestation in my terrarium, but I guess that's more why I'm a novice and he's more an expert, because he's prepared to deal with these types of situations.
When it was all done, there was only steam rising from the site like a smoking gun. Everything in the nest was still.
It really is hard to like kill things, especially when you start getting like microscopic on your ecosystems. And I can imagine in his case where he's got like these massive ones with all of this like life going on in it. When you start getting microscopic on that, you start like realizing how much death you actually create in the world. And then you immediately come to this like, well, it's a necessary thing conclusion. And I think most people stop there. And it is a necessary thing, unfortunately, but it's just, it kind of sucks about life. I come to that conclusion basically when I think about that every time, is that it just kind of sucks that it doesn't seem like there's a way for everything to live without like death. But I don't know, maybe death ain't so bad or something. Maybe death is fine.
As I've learned time and time again, I had to choose death in order to choose life.
Maybe death is actually better than life and we just don't realize it. But you also got to consider that, like, what's going on? Is your life not magical? I mean, like, crazy things happen in life. and we're interested and we're curious. You're watching a terrarium video, so you're curious and like all of this weird stuff. And there's a reason that we're here to experience it.
Thousands of black crazy ants that would have infiltrated our vivaria were now removed, and their bodies would now safely return to the system as nutrients.
I mean, that music on the outro right there was, I mean, that was good.
I began to plant more plants into the rainforest.
I do love the planting phase. I'm jealous of his terrariums because you can open them from the front and the back. And when I was building Genesis back there, I took the back glass panels out so I could go around the back and I could plant it all and stuff. But I had to put them back in, and now that the terrarium's all sealed up, I've got, you know, animals and stuff in there, and I can only access from the front panel. And I just wish every day that I could go around the back and have like another set of doors to open it and like work from the back as well.
I spotted one of the new assassin bugs staring at me as I worked.
Creatures do stare at you when you're like around them. I've noticed that quickly with terrariums, and especially with Genesis back there, since I'm more like the same size as it. The lizards will literally sit on the end of the log and just like look at me when I'm doing stuff, and you can just kind of tell that they're like looking, and they're as curious as we are. I think everything on this planet is as curious. I think curiosity is the answer to everything. Did I already say there was an answer to everything? Curiosity is that answer, or at least it's what motivates the answer.
I added new moss collected from the rainforest and planted some jade vine beans, hoping they would one day give rise to beautiful hanging flowers in the forest.
I looked these plants up on Etsy when I saw them on his channel, and I think they're like $80, and I can get, which is like a vine of them. It just has like leaves on it, and then obviously the blue and stuff that blooms out of it is the flower that only comes, you know, as often as flowers do. But yeah, like $80. I think on my next build I'm going to include some of those because they are pretty cool looking plants. Blue and purple.
As I continued to plant, I began to think about the biggest things I've learned during the 2+ years that I've been caring for these ecosystem vivaria. And here are the top 3 things this whole project of managing worlds within glass has taught me.
Worlds within glass. That's what I should have renamed my YouTube channel for the 50th time. I keep trying to come up with the perfect name. Glassbox Studio is where I'm at now, just because I like the whole camera and terrarium aspect of it. But worlds within glass. I'm sure that was taken or something.
Life isn't stagnant. It's dynamic and always changing. Whether it be the species we get to see in the vivaria or the preferences of the animals within, change drives all things. This also means that just because we don't see a certain creature in the vivaria, it doesn't mean it's not there. As these vivaria are massive, with endless places to live away from my view, only to one day pop up when you least expect.
Again, it's those little surprises is what's the like treat of, it's the reward that you get for building terrariums.
I still see the parasitic pseudoxylaria fungi growing around, which is concerning. If the termites did fail to establish in the grasslands, I'll just have to try again with new termite royals when they breed in June later this year.
See, I would be scared to put termites in my terrarium because I'd be scared that they would like get out of a crack or something, and suddenly the whole house is being like eaten by termites, and everyone's like, oh, where did these come from? And I'm just like kind of sitting there like, I don't know where they came from. I don't even really like this thing behind me.
Speaking of which, the second thing I've learned related to that is that life is all about cycles. Cycles of life and death, where death begets more life in a never-ending process of new beginnings and endings.
We really got into a lot of death in this video, but that's, again, like, how refreshing, right? I love how he's so focused on the ecosystems and like the worldly aspect of it, and how he somehow manages to bring like the entire, like, our world, our terrarium, Earth, down into this like tiny bubble that we get to look at through his camera lens.
I'm sad to report that the rhino beetles, which were placed into Verdantia last year, have finally passed away, as I see their exoskeletons scattered around the grasslands. Sadly, as adults, they only live for a season. But we watch the beetles mate with our own eyes. And AC family, below the soil, check out what I saw this week. A small rhino beetle grub.
See, I want to have some stuff going on in my soils too. So I do want to, like, I don't even know what to do. If you've got an idea, let me know of something that I can put in that's not like crazy, that's not like gonna take over the whole terrarium or something like that, but I can see like digging little holes or paths or something like that. AntsCanada had put like some sort of rodent in his at one point, some sort of like mouse looking thing, and I think the result was they ended up like breeding out of control, but they did have these like cool little tunnels all through in the substrate and stuff.
Our rhino beetles have successfully achieved their life purpose of securing the next generation of rhino beetles in our grasslands. Cycles also could be seen in the cycling of nutrients, as waste becomes food, and bodies become soil, which become plants, which become food again. Nothing ever goes to waste.
Since we've been talking about death so much on this video, I even told like my family members that I want to just be like thrown into the ground. I don't want to go and get chemicals put in me. I don't want to be like make-upped. I don't want to have no casket or anything like that. I just want like a hole dug or something and like throw me in there. Or if they want to do like a cool tree thing or something for me, that'd be kind of cool too. But I just want to like get back into the earth as quickly as possible when I go, I think, or at least I want my shed body, which probably means nothing to me at that point. I at least want it to become food for all of this stuff that I spent my life admiring.
Even the mango pits, apparently, that I've been throwing into the system for our blue ants, because one of them actually turned into a mango tree.
See that millibug on there? Hold on, let me back up.
Actually turned into a mango tree sapling.
I've been seeing mealybugs on one of my plants in there, and I used to, when I did like potted plants, I was so paranoid about them because mealybugs meant like the plant was done. Like you would try and treat it, but they would keep coming back and blah, 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 and it would just kind of die off slowly. But yeah, I've seen some mealybugs in there and the geckos, and just the ecosystem consumes them.
I don't know if a mango tree will actually end up growing here, but I can't wait to find out.
That's why I moved from like potted plants to ecosystems, is because it took me a little while, but I realized that I did have like a love for plants and all that sort of stuff. But what I really loved was the godlike feeling of creating a glass box that's got like a tiny little miniature jungle in it that I've handcrafted, and now get to observe and kind of satisfy that curiosity that we've been talking about this whole time.
Some of you may be wondering where Shortcake is, our resident strawberry Pac-Man frog. Well,
I don't want a Pac-Man frog ever either, because they also have to eat mice, and they seem really boring. They just sit there and then you like dangle a mouse in front of them, and then they like jump out and they eat it, and it's really exciting because they kind of scare you a little bit, but then they just go back to like sitting there.
Currently hibernating beneath the soil, which is perfect because once she emerges in a few months when things get warmer, she'll be ready to mate. And I have some exciting plans for when she does, when breeding conditions are more favorable for her. And on the topic of favorable breeding conditions, I noticed a movement.
I wonder if that's a real rock right there. I think I'm gonna go with like a styrofoam.
Hey, what's that? It was then that I realized that it was Sunny and Cher, who had established a nest together under the rock. Yay! Looks like Verdantia met their approval for the raising of their first set of children. I couldn't wait to see little tiny quails filing out of here very soon. Finally, the third major thing I learned is that my job as creator of worlds is an active role, not just a passive one.
I kind of like that creator of worlds title. I usually just kind of think of it as like the creator title, like we're all creators, or at least some of us on this planet are creators, and that's why we're here, to like learn and be curious. And maybe when we go, we get to go up and we get to design some stuff, or maybe we designed all of this. Who knows what's actually going on? But I do like that creator of worlds title.
When I simply sit back and allow life to run its course for too long without some intervention, without some addition or subtraction of elements into the system, things go awry.
If you missed it, what he's talking about is that he needs to be an active creator. He needs to be an active God in the ecosystem. So if he stops adding little things, little fruits for the ants to eat, or little this or whatever all he's like putting in there physically, then things eventually get out of balance. One thing probably starts dominating all of the others, and the one population of that species grows out of control. The plants all end up dying out because that species probably consumes them. And, you know, it's a mess.
I must act as the outside forces, simulating the absence of these glass boundaries, feeding and nurturing, maintaining the balance of life from outside the worlds. I had to continually add leaf litter into the system for nutrients and add new members to the system to simulate the creatures entering the space from beyond.
We are creators. If that doesn't convince you of it, then I don't know what will, because that's the itch that I've got. And I know that's probably the itch that you've got if you've made it this far. That's definitely the itch that Mikey's got. And is it not the most fulfilling itch to scratch, to literally like become the creator?
A few days later, the flock descended to have breakfast, and the baby hung around, still begging to be fed. Feed me! No.
Did you hear how I did the voiceover for the birds there? Feed me! No. That was fun. I don't notice him doing that very much.
Imperative that the baby learn to eat seeds on its own. It was already nibbling on basil, which was great, but this wasn't enough. Would it go for the seeds? What the heck? It flew down and began to feed with the grown-ups, thereby graduating from bird school with honors. Congrats, little one. I placed in a second nest for when the birds were ready to begin egg-laying again, to ensure a more even incubation process for the young. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be keeping the birds in here, as I plan on finding them a forever home soon.
How's he gonna get the birds out of there is the question. Is he gonna get in there with a net? I mean, it is big enough, he probably could, but I would just imagine that would be a nightmare. I'm terrified to ever have to remove the geckos or the frogs or anything from there, because it's just gonna be like such a pain. They're just gonna run away and get into a little crack or something. How do you get them all?
We're now on year 3 of this grand ecosystem vivarium project, and last night I took the time to visit each world and truly marvel at the life it contained within. I never want to take this magnificence for granted. What an amazing journey it's been, right, AC family?
These are the shots. These are the ones that he saves for the end, the big, wide ones, the ones that we all want to see because we get that little sneak peek.
Now, I also couldn't help but wonder, what was next for this vivarium project?
His house is also amazing.
What new heights could we reach on this path to simulated God view?
He's literally got a net woven into the floor, like a piece of the floor is missing, and he's got a hammock woven into it. And he can just lay there and either stare out his window into the real forest, or he can look back at his upper layer of his terrariums. I mean, we all want it. I just want to back up for a second
now,
and show you.
I also couldn't help but wonder,
look
what was
at
next for
his
this
terrariums down here, and then this staircase that goes to the upper level, and then these ones are connected. If you haven't seen one of his videos where he goes and walks around and shows it, make sure you go to his channel AntsCanada and do that, because I thought this was what that was. It's not, but maybe we'll do another one of those if any of you like this. But how cool is this
what
transition?
New heights could we reach on this path
cool
to
room.
simulated God view? What new possibilities in biological
Imagine
world
walking into
building
this every day.
could we explore? What new creatures could we welcome?
He also had an alligator in here for a while, like a little baby one. And then when it got too big, he removed it. And I think it's like somewhere else outside or something like that on his property now.
What is our role in this entire biological picture? And what new secrets of Mother Nature could we uncover next? Particularly when we finally connect Verdantia to the rest of the Vivaria. I guess we'll just have to find out.
Look at that scene right there. What an incredible terrarium. And he always does a good tease at the end too. Looks like a scorpion or something like that. He is really into like the bugs. I like the geckos. I want to be like a gecko guy. I think I've decided. There's that crocodile I was talking about.
I promise, your time will come.
Maybe it is still inside, actually. I don't know. And that was it. That was the novice terrarium keeper's reaction to the best terrarium keeper that's out there that I've ever found personally. AntsCanada, again, if you're not one of the 6 million people that subscribe to his channel, you should definitely be seeing the work that he's doing. Again, I love the fact that he's like focused on the ecosystems. I think that's so refreshing. And I'm sure there's like a lot of other stuff out there. I want to do more of these, like, I want to show you guys more tour videos like this. I was hoping this was more of like a tour of the ecosystem. That was sort of my idea. It turned into something else, but I want to do a little bit more of those in the future. So if you haven't become part of the 6 million subscribers on AntsCanada, become a subscriber of one of the few thousand on my channel. And I want to show you some more of these tours too, because I like to watch this stuff. I like to watch these terrarium videos. And to be honest with you, selfishly, it's kind of fun knowing that somebody actually listened to the thoughts that are usually just kind of like going in my head when I'm watching these things, that when I record a video, I can just kind of splurt them out of my mouth out loud.